Hello and welcome another edition of Coach's Corner. And today we're going to talk some Big Ten baseball. And they're one of the P4 now back to P5 with the new Pac-12 coming into play. And today we're going to talk to former Campbell head coach and current Ohio State University head coach, and one of my favorite coaches as far as enthusiasm and intensity with regard to offensive baseball, Justin Haire. And Justin, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah, Walter, I appreciate it, man. Appreciate what you do for baseball in general, amateur, college, pro, the whole deal, man. You kind of run the gamut and got your hands in a lot of things, man. And we certainly appreciate it and appreciate the opportunity to come on today.
I want to talk a little bit now. I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of the settlement and so forth, but the changes with regard to college baseball, it's a stronger game, it's a faster game, and really at the end of the day, coaches like that, scouts like that. Talk a little bit about now recruiting in this environment and how it's changed as far as the dates and the times throughout the calendar year.
Yeah, I think there's certainly there's been a lot of change in the last 22 years. It feels like that's it's evolved. We've gone back to some things. When I first got into coaching, you could transfer and not have to sit out. You could even transfer at the break and not have to sit out.
Right.
And then you had to go, and then they changed that and sit out a year. And now we're back to the you can transfer and not have to sit out, but you can't transfer at the break. So what's old is new, and a lot of in between. But there's a lot of positives, I think, just in the way the game's evolved. I think that as you see, and sometimes I don't think people make the correlation that college baseball right now, certainly at the highest levels of college baseball, it has evolved, at maybe like a 3 to 4 year lag time from maybe professional baseball, as you start to see more power arms and power bats in professional baseball, and more strikeouts and more home runs, and some different things. You see that starting to filter down into the college game, and so over the last 4 or 5 years, I think you've seen more of that. You see guys that are throwing 100 miles an hour. You see guys that are hitting balls incredibly hard and putting together really impressive offensive seasons. You're seeing some of those game changes, the pitch clock, and some of those things that have evolved from the big leagues down through the minor leagues, maybe minor leagues to big leagues, then into college, that have certainly adjusted and changed the game a little bit. But at the same time, I think if we're not continually evolving as college coaches, then we're probably leaving things on the table. And so, continually pushing those things in our program has been really important, but it also has set our guys up for success when they do get into pro ball, that it's not a huge jump. And so those things kind of go hand in hand. Some of the changes are not that much fun, but a lot of them have benefited the game. They've evened out the game. You see, quote unquote, 2 mid majors in, Coastal Carolina. Not that I think that they're really a mid major, but you see, Murray State making the run they did this year, and you seeing a lot of different conferences represented in the final 8 teams playing. And so I think it's good for the game. I think it's fun, and I think it's a continual evolution. So that part's been fun.
I know when you as a coach are out looking at prospective student athletes, you are a great evaluator of talent. Can you talk about why that's important, especially in today's world of college baseball? Evaluation has to be on point when you're bringing in, whether it's the younger athletes or even the athletes that are in the portal. From an evaluation, it's not so much dream and develop. It's, hey, man, I need you to be ready when your feet hit campus to come in here to compete with 34 spots.
Yeah. I think with the new roster limits, I think that makes it even, it makes it even more important. There's not going to be, and there's not going to be as much opportunity, I don't think, moving forward to bring in 55 or 60. Not that our programs have ever done that, but a lot of programs will do that in the fall. They'll bring in 55 or 60 guys, and it'll be a little bit of a tryout camp, and then they'll kind of make cuts at the break. And so I think that will start to pare itself down over the course of time. Maybe not this first year of the new roster limits, but I think that's on the horizon. That's something that the ABCA has been, pretty forward thinking about. But I think the evaluation process is really important. I've always thought, and it was always really important for us at Campbell, and certainly important for us at Ohio State, is not just to know what you like, right? Like, we like physical bodies that have bat speed or arm speed and can do some things and have some tools. But I think for us, it's really important to know what you don't like, right? Or what you don't,
Right.
what you're not comfortable with. Because again, man, like, whether you're recruiting kids out of the portal, whether you're recruiting junior college kids, or whether you're recruiting high school kids, knowing what the tools that and the actions that you like to work with or feel comfortable working with, and knowing what you don't is really important. And so, because with how the portal's developed, there's not a ton of kids that are coming into college and sit and only get 5 or 10 or 15 at bats, or 5 or 10 or 15 innings, and understand the long-term development plan. In our society, it is a what can you do for me right now society. And so you've got to know what you're looking for and what you feel comfortable developing. And for us, is being upfront and honest with those kids. If we feel like, hey man, like, you're 2 years away, we're going to tell them that in the recruiting process. So that at the end of the fall, at the end of that spring, it's a real open and honest conversation. Hey, remember, in the recruiting process, we told you that we think you're 2 years away from helping us on the field. That's, our 18-month development plan for you is right on track. And so I think some of that is helpful. And so I think for us, it's just finding that niche and making sure that we're being honest and upfront with those guys on the evaluation and development process.
Before I get to my next question, I want to let parents know, with regard to the baseball blue book, you're able to find Coach Haire, Ohio State baseball, all information is pertaining to camps and so forth on the baseball blue book. So I encourage you, download the app, create a profile, and get in front of coaches like Coach Haire at Ohio State, and make sure you're always up to speed, making sure you keep your videos fresh and content fresh. Coach, I want to ask you about a word that we don't hear a lot about with regard to recruiting in baseball, which is resiliency. We keep hearing physicality, speed, skill, but the need for high school or younger athletes to be resilient, mentally tough, mentally disciplined, is just as important as the physical component. Can you talk a little bit about that, not only with regard to your younger athletes, but college athletes in general?
Yeah. I mean, man, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think having some of that toughness and resiliency is huge, because things aren't always going to go your way, right? Like, whether that's you grow up and you have a dream of going to XYZ school, and maybe you're not really at that talent level, but you got a talent level to be able to go play college athletics, college sports, college baseball somewhere, or be at a good place. I remember growing up in Southwest Ohio, and I was a good high school baseball player, but I wasn't maybe as good as I thought I was, man, I would have loved to gone to Ohio State, for instance. I didn't get recruited by Ohio State. Bob Todd wasn't knocking on my door, saying, hey, come to Ohio State. But you have to be able to move past that. You have to be able to stay in the fight and find the right place. And then I think once you're on campus, you have to understand, especially in today's landscape of college athletics and college baseball, there's grown men in the locker room, right? And there's grown men that are 22, 23, 24 years old. They're in their 4th, 5th, 6th year of college, of being in a college weight room, of going through college baseball seasons, and all of those things. And coming in as a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, you're at a natural deficit, and that's okay. But that resiliency of being able to show up every day, knowing that it's a long-term play, knowing that the longer you stay in the fight, the more you close that gap between you and all the challenges that you're going to have to navigate. Because there is a ton of adversity in college athletics right now. There is a ton of challenge in navigating that path. And so, yes, physicality is great. Yes, talent is great, but that ability to stick to it, the ability to fight through that adversity, the ability to show some toughness in the face of non-physical challenges, can really separate you from being a guy that bounces around to 3 or 4 different places, never finds his home, to a guy that kind of puts his nose down and works and looks up as a sophomore or junior or senior and ends up being an all conference, all
Right.
American type guy that has a tremendous career because sometimes that's what it takes. Not everybody. The process of delayed gratification is fewer and further in between in today's society. And so if you have the ability to be disciplined in your approach and know that the longer you work hard, the more benefit you get in the long term, man, can really separate you from the rest of the pack.
So one of the topics that we don't hear enough about, and I really want to take a dive into this topic with you because I think it's really relevant with regard to Big Ten, at least in today's standards, is with the addition of UCLA, USC, the travel component. So when we're talking with parents, they think, oh, baseball, school, I've been doing it in high school, but we don't talk enough about that. Okay, I have a midweek game here, then I got to come home, then I got to fly to LA or Los Angeles to play UCLA. Talk a little bit about Big Ten Conference is a huge baseball conference when you start talking about all of these new additions to the Big Ten lineup, the travel component. So you really have to have time management skills, but daily routines to deal with all of the travel that you're doing as a student athlete at Ohio State.
Yeah, yeah. One from the academic side, we're fortunate because our student athlete, support system is unbelievable, right? Like, the resources that we have on the academic side, our people travel with us. We have tutors, we have learning specialists, we have all those things, and so that part is pretty special. But the challenge, you're right. Like, in our conference schedule this year coming up in 26, we play 10 conference weekends, 5 home, 5 on the road. When I was growing up in the 90s and then
Right.
playing college baseball in the early 2000s, like almost everybody in the Big Ten was a bus trip away, right?
Right.
You might have, some further ones, but if you had 5 road weekends in the Big Ten, you were probably driving to 4 of them. Now we've got 5 road weekends in the Big Ten, and we're only driving to 2, right? And so we're at Washington for a weekend, we're at Rutgers for one weekend, and we're at Minnesota for one weekend. And so, I was telling my sport administrator the other day, I said, hey, just understand that in our conference, like we're playing from coast to coast in one of the northernmost schools in the country playing college baseball. Like, and so there's some inherent challenges in that. And so yeah, like having a recovery routine, having the routine and having built in the ability to stay on top of your schoolwork and having study hall when you're on the road. Understand, like when you're in the hotel, it's not just you being able to sleep in and play PlayStation and get your food and then go play. Like we still have to play school, right? Like we still have to, have some time carved out to make sure that you're getting your work done and staying on top of your academic schedule, staying on top of your hydration and your nutrition schedule, staying on top of your recovery in the cold tubs and the float tanks and the compression sleeves and all of those things. Because and we're not the only conference. There's a growing number of conferences that footprint continues to get bigger, and the travel on those sides get bigger, and so that ability to stay hydrated and stay on top of your nutrition while you're on the road and understanding what plane flights do to your body, when you don't even know it, right? Like just breathing in that air makes your body have to work harder to produce oxygen, which dehydrates you more, which, again, like now you have to go play at 6 o'clock at night on the West Coast. It's 9 o'clock where you're from, right? Like, and you've been dehydrated on a 5-hour flight. Like, yeah, man, like we've got to push those routines of how do we handle that? How do we deal with that? And then how do we put ourselves in the best position to be successful? And so, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. There's a lot of planning that goes into that. There's a lot of tiny details that we've got to make sure that we stay on top of and provide for our guys so that we can compete at the highest level, we can recruit at the highest level, and we can achieve in the classroom at the highest level.
So one of the topics that I know that you are an elite evaluator of is offensive baseball. And I think, today's world, when I was a kid, hitting was, just doing a lot of individual stuff, whether it was with a broomstick or just hitting baseballs in the backyard of the sandlot. Now it's lessons, it's all of this, exit velocity and all of this stuff. I would love for you to talk about when you're evaluating hitters, especially the older high school hitters. Talk about what you're looking for in a hitter that might matter more than the exit velocity, for instance.
Sure. Yeah, I think consistency is really important, right? Like the best hitters that we ever have had, whether it was a physical guy that had bat speed, whether it was a smaller body guy or a guy that didn't maybe drive the ball as much. I think of Tyler Halstead that we had at
Yep.
Campbell that I mean hit 375 one year and 385 the next year, and probably like 7 career home runs in the 2 years that he played every day for us, but played an elite center field and could do some things, bat to ball skills, consistency every day. He had the ability to play the short game when needed. And so having some consistency on what we're going to get with you in the box every day is really important. The ability to expand your game beyond just putting the barrel on the baseball is important. Putting the barrel on the baseball, really important. Being able to control the zone and swing at pitches that are good and take the pitches that are bad, really important. Being consistent every single day, where one day is not an 0 for 5 with 4 punch outs and the next day is a 4 for 5. Like when we can string together consistent at bats that have nothing to do with how hard you hit the baseball. Can we get hit by pitch? Can we walk? Can we get on base and be an aggressive base runner? Whether you're a 6'4" runner or a 7'4" runner or an 8'4" runner, there is a place for you to learn base running and understand how your talents and skills can play into putting pressure on the defense. And so I think those pieces, right? How dynamic is your game? How consistent are your at-bats? And how do you affect the game in the areas that don't include you swinging the bat, right? Like, because scoring runs and playing offense is different than hitting. Hitting is a piece
Man,
of that. And at the end of the day, the game is built around who scores more runs, not who hits more baseballs, right? And so seeing that there's guys that have some dynamic capability is a huge piece that is more than just how pretty is your swing and how many times do you put the barrel on the ball. Now, put the barrel on the ball as often as possible. That's always a benefit, right? Hitting the ball harder than not hitting the ball,
right.
always a benefit. Having more bat speed than less bat speed, always a benefit. But there is an aspect of playing offense that far exceeds just being able to hit the baseball hard.
So, on that note, and I really want you to kind of explain this because I've heard you talk about it before, is baseball IQ. We talk about all these metrics and analytics and video. I had a young man, he sent a video out, he got a base hit to left, kind of takes a slow turn, peels off the gloves and the mitts and all the stuff, hands it to. I said, hey man, you can't send that video out. You didn't take a hard turn at all. You weren't putting any pressure on the defense. Can you talk about when the younger athletes, and this is why younger athletes are, when you're recruiting, I'm sure the older athletes kind of get an understanding of, hey, if I'm between the lines, I got to be busting every at bat, every pitch. But baseball IQ, whether it's base running, approach at the plate, depending upon the score, putting balls in play, moving runners. Can you talk when you're out looking at, especially the high school athletes, how important that is for them to really understand those dynamics that help them get recruited that they don't have stats for?
Yeah, it's so important because again, like in the recruiting process, especially with younger athletes, you're trying to find ways to separate yourself, but separate yourself in a positive way,
Right.
right? When we show up to a field, any coach, any evaluator, anything, our eyes are naturally drawn to the biggest, more physical guys. Well, that might be 2 guys on a team of 20, right? So now you're talking about 10% of the guys, our eyes are naturally drawn to them. Well, if I'm one of the other 18 guys on the team, which is 90% of the guys, I need to try to find a way to get my evaluator's eyes on me. Well, how do I do that? I can't be 6'2", I can't be 200. I just am what I am, right? And so being able to separate yourself when it comes to hustle, when it comes to understanding the game and being in the right place at the right time, communication, being into the game and being engaged and being locked in, all of those things that are within my control that have nothing to do with how hard the ball comes out of a pitcher's hand or any of those things. Like, that's how you start to get evaluators' eyes on you, is that the little things, the small details, the things that separate players from being an average player to a good player, or a good player to a great player, that are not physical, are the things that are so important. Hey, man, like, if I look at my notes at the end of a night and it's like, hey, this dude plays the game the right way. Yeah, that's a 4-4 on the turn. Yeah, man, like, he's getting out of the box. He's putting pressure on. He's dirt ball read plus, like, any little thing that I can write a plus next to in the evaluation process that gets my eyes on you. That's not just a physical gift. If you're not addressing those things, if you're not investing in getting better at those things, then you're leaving opportunity on the table. And in the recruiting process, when there's so many kids and there's so much talent nationwide, you can't just count on the fact that you went 2 for 3 with 2 singles as a 5'8" right-handed hitter to be the only separator, because there's so many aspects of the game that matter to winning baseball. And the more that you can master those things or display those things, the more pluses you have in the column on the evaluation sheet, which means that I or evaluators are more likely to round back to that and think, man, that guy, he might be a little undersized right now, but he sure plays the game the right way. He sure does it right. He sure is going to help his team win baseball games, or bring me back to, hey, I want to see that guy a little bit more. I need to see him 2 or 3 more times this weekend, opposed to like, yeah, they didn't have anybody, let's move on to the next club. Those things really make a big difference.
Last question, Coach, and that is, where is the high school athlete now with regard to recruiting at Ohio State? Is it camps? Are you still going to some of the traditional events, late summer, early fall, Jupiter, Lake Point during PBR? How does the athlete at the high school level get in front of your staff or your program?
Yeah, I think two or three really, really important things. One, camps are really big for us. One, because it's getting people to Ohio State. That's
Right.
really important to us and our ability to separate ourselves, right? As we're trying to build this back into a top 40 type program, we want people on our campus, right? Like, we want guys that are talented to be able to show up and see our facilities and see what we're building and see the vision and all of those things. That's really important to have those guys here on campus and showing their skills, because under no circumstances can we possibly know every player
Right.
in the Midwest, in the country, and whatever. And Ohio State is so global. We have 600,000 nation or global living alumni. That
Wow.
brand is so big. We've got to have people come to campus and get in front of us, because the guy that isn't on the travel ball team that's still playing Legion ball in Southern Ohio or Eastern Kentucky or West Virginia or Tennessee or wherever, we can't possibly know about that guy, but they probably know about Ohio State, and we want them here at our campus. So that's number one. Number two, we're still hot and heavy on the recruiting trail when it comes to the traditional events, the World Wood Bat, Hoover, Grand Park here in Indianapolis, 3 hours from here. They've just built a sports park here in town called Jennings Family Sports Park, which is going to end up being like 10 fields and this whole deal. And so it'll be very similar to a Lake Point, very similar to Grand Park in Indianapolis, which will be huge for the Columbus area and just Ohio in general. And so being on a quality travel ball team is important. And then I think the third piece, and this is where we want to continue to grow at Ohio State, and this is for travel ball coaches, is having team camps here at Ohio State, especially in the fall, and pair up good travel ball organizations with 2 or 3 other good travel ball organizations. Bring in your top 2 teams or 2 of your teams and come play for a weekend when we don't have a home football game here at Ohio State, where we get a chance to evaluate 2 or 3 different age groups of one organization or 2 organizations, and they get to play outside of their organization. They get to play right here at Bill Davis Stadium. They get to play and use our facilities and get instructed by our coaching staff. I think those 3 things, those individual showcases, continue to play on good travel ball organizations and be in the right spot, and then getting your organizations here for some team camps, especially in the fall. Because again, like I think in the fall, travel ball can get crazy, right? Like it can get crazy expensive. You're traveling all over the country. Parents are like, they need a break. Like, hey, I just want to be able to like drive 3 hours and watch my kid play for a weekend instead of 7 days in Atlanta or Hoover or whatever. Like, I mean, the amount of money that gets spent is wild, man. It's wild. And so I think we can get more bang for our buck when we do some of those things. And so we try to make that a really important piece, because the long-term foundation of our program will be built through high school guys. Especially on the mound,
Right.
And our best teams, the teams that we had at Campbell that were top 25, that were, in regionals for 5 straight years and all that were largely built, especially on the mound, with high school guys that we got into our program and we were able to develop over a course of time. And those guys have had tremendous success moving their way up through the college ranks and into professional baseball. And that's exactly how we'll build it here.
Well, I want to encourage families, obviously student athletes. I mean, Coach Haire is one of the preeminent elite college coaches. For sure, will build Ohio State into a top 40 program. And, Big Ten baseball, for all of those that focus on other 3-letter conferences, I can just tell you that Big Ten baseball, especially in today's world with East Coast to West Coast, is elite college baseball. So I strongly encourage you. Again, the Blue Book will tell you all of Ohio State's upcoming baseball camps, all of the Ohio State coaches' contact information. Make sure you're downloading that app. And Justin, thank you so much for taking the time today. I truly appreciate it. I know it's a busy time of year with all the portal stuff and recruiting, but I appreciate you taking the time today.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me on. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Buckeye baseball, and look forward to talking again in the future.
Go Buckeyes.
That's right. Go Bucks, baby.